Welcome to another episode of It Depends podcast. Today, our guest is Raj Bains, whose company Prophecyio is reimagining the world of data engineering, the world of building and deploying data pipelines in the most efficient manner. Prophecy is a low-code product to do complex data transformations, but I don't want to steal the thunder. I would like to welcome Raj. Thank you for joining this podcast.
Thanks, Sanjeev. I'm delighted to be here.
Can you please introduce yourself and tell us more about your background?
Sure. So I'm Raj Bains. My background initially, as a lot of startup founders do, I've come from engineering, but I've come from systems, which is different in the tooling stack. So I worked at Microsoft on the compiler for Visual Studio. A lot of it, my time was I'm mostly specialist in optimizers, so optimizing Windows code. Then I moved to NVIDIA in Bay Area back in 2006, I believe, 7. So CUDA was just getting started. So I was amongst the first couple of people on CUDA. I think Mike worked on the infrastructure. I worked on optimizer for CUDA. And so I spent the next 4 years doing that. And so that was a very interesting journey because we built CUDA, and it's great to see it have all the impact. And then I moved into databases as an engineer building distributed databases in a startup. But from there, I thought that I could add a lot more value with product management, product marketing, finding repeatable product market fit. So I moved into product marketing and product management. And then at Hortonworks, I was managing Apache Hive, where, of course, it was through the IPO. We were getting a lot of traction. We got rid of MapReduce, those days where we were making Hive into a dominant product at that time within the Hadoop stack.
It's very interesting. So you were, do you still stay in touch with the open source Apache community?
Not so much. I know some I know some engineers. So I stay in touch with some of the engineers. I work closely with their friends from Hortonworks and through that, but not that much with the wider community.
Right. So Raj, where were you when you started Prophecy? What was the problem that you were facing that led you to this concept of Prophecy? And what is Prophecy? I gave a very high level stuff. So maybe you can walk us through the journey of who your co-founders are. How did you start Prophecy and why?
Sure. So when I was at Hortonworks, I saw a lot of data users really struggle with data, right? So they're trying to get value out of it. It's very hard. And in a sense, the first realization was that, hey, data needed a product company. And when I say a product company, and there's many kinds of products, not the data products, right? Basically, Hortonworks Hadoop was an engineering company. It was focused on, okay, I built this, now you figure out how to use it, right? Not meeting the users where they're at their skill set, focusing on value provided to them. So that was one realization. Other, I was working with all the tool vendors, right? Because the ETL vendors, the Informaticas of the world, the BI tools of the world, they would all connect to Prophecy. And I was looking at them and I'm like, these are very simple tools built by mostly application developers. And then, so that was the second thing that was going on. The third thing that was so in that sense, everybody was also saying, hey, I'm spending 90% of my 90% of my time preparing data. And then they've been saying it year after year and nothing changes, right? So as a builder, I'm like, I'm going to go solve it, right? And that's how I look at it. And then the question is, what am I going to solve? It's like, I'm going to solve the entire problem because people have been talking about it. Nobody seems to solve it. And the key insight there is that coming from compilers, coming from systems, you build very complex, very reliable software, right? For example, you compile your Java program, the compiler pretty much always works, right? It's not like the data stack. So in that sense, the realization was that you can bring a lot more power to the data tools and solve this problem for good. So that's how Prophecyio started. Now, on the journey, I think we had Vikas and Maciej, who are co-founders. So Vikas started very early with me. Of course, he's more on the business and account management side. He's expert in understanding enterprises, how they buy how they adopt technologies and all of that, which is a very important thing as well. And he angel funded the company some, and then waited till the product was there to sell and joined us. And then I was in Berkeley Skydeck. That's an accelerator like Y Combinator, but it is earlier than Y Combinator. You don't need to have traction yet, for example. So I was there. Maciej was there. He had his own startup. He was building ML-based solutions to summarize research for pharma companies. He was working with Sanofi, Genentech, some large pharma companies. And then his company ended up being a smaller market than he had initially thought. So it was not venture backable. So he joined me instead. So that's how we came together. But he was using Spark, he was using ML, and he was also seeing the data preparation plane. So it's like some of it is by chance, some of it is, so there is early days in startup are, not as designed as you'd think,
Yeah.
you
And
find
which,
the right people by chance
which
sometimes.
year did you start Prophecy?
So I started Prophecy in 2017, but actually I left Hortonworks at the end of 2015.
Okay.
And then since I was product managing and product marketing for 4 years, I didn't know how to, I had like my last coding was really low level C programming, right? Where I'm looking at optimizing individual cycles. And then so I had to come back and say, okay, if I'm going to build a product, I'm going to code it myself. So I came back, learned Scala, learned cloud. Cloud had come in the middle. So learned cloud programming, AWS, Terraform, Kubernetes. So I had to learn the whole stack again. So I spent some time doing that. I would say a year doing that.
I see. Got it. So in 2017, you identified some problem, and today, now it's been 6 years. How has the data engineering space evolved?
So in 2017, initially I started saying I was thinking of data engineering or machine learning studio. So 2017 to 2019, I spent on data engineering studio, which had data prep, some ML, auto ML, and some what if dashboards. And then that was going to be too consulting heavy, as a lot of AI companies are. You've seen H2O and other companies. They have like forward deployed engineers, because it's so I didn't like that model. It was going to need consulting. So 2019, we switched to just data engineering. That's something I knew very well. And we got seed funding. So that's still been 4 years. And the data space has evolved where, I was working with enterprises. So I decided that we'll build the product with an enterprise, seeing the full extent of their problems, right? Not that we are taking some of their easy use cases. We go in there, we see all the gnarly use cases, the complex use cases, all the needs they have, and build there. So as we were building that, the market has changed quite a lot, right? So initially, there were not that many products on the cloud. Of course, Informatica started trying to build a cloud product, and then the modern data stack came in this time. And then at Series A time, it was almost impossible to raise money, because the conventional wisdom suddenly changed. You know how quickly we see trends change. And everybody was like, bottoms up, PLG, product-led growth. That's the only thing we'll fund. And so it was really hard for me to get funded. We could not get funded from the Bay Area, right? So we got money from, East Coast, one of the largest venture firms. So, and that fashion changed. I think, of course, so I've seen that. We've seen some adoption in mid-market of those technologies. It was very hard for us at that time, because we had to convince people that we were building an enterprise product. We were able to sell. So we believe that this is the right solution. The customers believe it's the right solution. We are able to sell, but the product is large, so I can't sell in volume, right? Like PLG companies. But it was very hard to convince anybody to put money into anything except a small feature. That's what has happened. And so as the market has played out, all these companies are now in mid-market. And now then, the market went, mid-market started buying much lesser, and all of them now have to make the switch to enterprise, which was all part of their story. And let's see how that goes. We think it's not that easy. And I don't know how many companies will do it, but it's just like it has happened where there were full ETL products on-prem. We started building this full ETL product on the cloud. Nobody else did. All these small products came, they all ran up, and they were all talked about. Now they're all kind of stuck trying to, and we'll see how the market plays out. But that's I guess, the evolution. But no, the amusing thing for us is nobody has tried to come up with a full, complete, good solution, right? It's like, in a certain degree, right? So it's obvious, right? Like, for example, everybody knew that there was a snowflake to be built out there.
Yeah.
Somebody had to bite the bullet and build the snowflake, a good data warehouse written from scratch, optimized for the cloud, right? Because Redshift wasn't written for the cloud, right? That was written before the cloud. So everybody knew it. Somebody has to bite the bullet and make it. So, and we are in the same bucket, right? Somebody had to make it. Nobody's biting the bullet and building the whole product. And, and so we kind of, yeah.
What is the whole product? So when you say this complete solution, what are the building blocks?
Yeah. So if you look at, let's start with a couple of examples. In the last generation, let's take Ab Initio and Informatica as two representative products. Now, Ab Initio has a distributed high performance in processing engine, which you can think is 90% Apache Spark. Very similar APIs and very similar performance. They performed really well. So if you're using that, you were using their engine, but on top of that, they had a huge number of things. One is a low-code development environment. Second, a low-code environment that could be extended to build your own frameworks and standards, etc. Then there is a proper process of development, versioning, moving things from development to production. When you move things from development to production, observing that, having data quality checks, so data quality, data observability, performance management, orchestration. So all of that, and then of course, right, there is metadata that everything produces. You create data sets, that's metadata. Pipelines is metadata. You execute pipelines, that's metadata. And now you have the summary. You're like, hey, what does my data quality look across my organization? What does my, where is my cost going across my organization? Which jobs are taking more time? So there is this full product end to end. And now if you ask a data analyst, you give them a value that was computed by data engineering. And you say, how was this value computed? So there is lineage, and lineage has a summary definition. Perhaps it gets converted into English by a metadata architect, but you know how something was computed. So this is the entire product. So in coding, there are two main problems. One is the business logic itself. One is the process. In the world of OpenAI, etc., the process has not become simpler. The coding of the individual business logic might have become simpler. So I feel like the process is something that people do not give enough emphasis to, and that's very, very important. So that's the full product. So just one more thing to add there. In case of Informatica, since its processing engine was not distributed and could not run at scale, so a lot of times they would push the query down. They call it query push down into, say, Teradata, IBM DB2, some data warehouse, right? So they would do that, but that. So now when we are saying full product, we are saying everything except the processing engine. The processing engine is a Spark or a SQL data warehouse. We'll not even build our own, but we are building everything else in that product.
But what if a customer wants to do push down?
They can push down. Like, so when you say push down, right? So for us, push down is the thing, right? It's like if you're doing visual drag and drop and you want to run it in Databricks, it'll run in Databricks. If you want to do visual drag and drop, you want to run it in a SQL data warehouse, it'll run in the SQL data warehouse. So for us, push down is the only thing we do.
The only thing you do, I see.
And similarly, like if you look at DBT or Matillion, push down is the only thing they do. They don't, there's no ETL tools having their own processing engines is not something that can work anymore.
So you disaggregated the process from execution, so focus on the process and do the execution where the best engine already exists. So why duplicate the engine?
Exactly.
So 2 points I want to ask you about. One, the first is not a question, but it's the comparison with Ab Initio makes me very uncomfortable because Ab Initio is such a throwback to, in my opinion, a legacy product that, I mean, I know a lot of my clients in the past used to be big ab initio users like Capital One, and as they moved to the cloud, they've just gotten rid of it. So that was just one observation. The question I have is, there were low code, no code tools already existed in the market. In fact, some of the companies you mentioned were doing it for decades. So what was the new piece that you brought in?
Definitely. So first thing is that one is I'm trying to explain where we are fitting in the market. So for example, Teradata used to do something. When you move to the cloud, you still have that something to be done. Right. You'll do it on Snowflake. You no longer use Teradata, but that functionality is an essential need of the business. So that's the context in which I talked about ab initio. That was an essential need, right? Now the switch from tools, right? So now first is to say, in this whole thing where you are managing metadata, lineage, search, execution, observability, data quality, in all of that, low-code interface is one of the things, right? Of course, when you say a low-code platform, it means, we are saying all of these things. But in the low-code bucket, like early 90s, people used to use SQL, right? There's nothing new about SQL.
Right.
There was Teradata. There's nothing new about Snowflake in terms of what it offers, right? It's the same thing that you could do in Teradata. So in that sense, people were using bash scripts and SQL in early 90s to middle 90s, right? And then Informatica came and other ETL tools came, and everybody realized that managing ad hoc scripts is really bad, especially for the process. Like, what is your lineage? What is your development process, deployment process? How do you support it? How do you handle errors? So there is a whole bunch of things in the process that all break. So because of that, people moved to tools. Everybody moved to tools. Now, when you go to the cloud, now the cloud tool is not going to look the same as the on-prem tool. Just like Snowflake doesn't look like Teradata. Now you have to say, what does it look like and how is it different, right? So the first thing is it has to be designed for the processing engines in the cloud, which has separate storage and compute. So that is your Spark and that is your SQL data warehouse, right? They are designed like that. And there is no need to build your own processing engine, right? If you're still trying to pull your own processing engine, you're in a losing battle. The second thing is there was a separate world of visual and there was a separate world of code. Right. And it was like, if I want to do a few things, I'm in this visual thing. I'm using, say, Informatica. I can only use that functionality and everything has to be in Informatica. And I can't interact with the world of code. If they give me what I need, I'm happy. If they don't, I'm stuck. And now I must abandon this and start this completely separate thing in code and have two things, right? So in that sense, they had this walled garden proprietary lock-in approach where they said, hey, once you are in our format, we are going to continue to take money from you because we've locked you in, right? So what we said is the first thing. So we said a couple of things. The first thing we said is let's merge visual and code programming, right? So we said, let's merge these two approaches because you can't do without either of them in today's world. You still have very high number of users who want to use data and be productive. Without a visual interface, there is no way in the future that you can say, hey, I can enable many, many thousands of analysts and other data users in an organization. So I can say that's a must-have. On the other side, the power of code is also a must-have. Like nobody wants to be locked in, say, here are 30 components, that's all you get. So, so what we said is that first, as you build visual pipelines, we'll generate high-quality code.
And that's Python.
High-quality code, yes. So if you're using Spark, we generate Scala or Python code. Right. If you're using SQL, we use SQL with dbt core.
Okay.
And we use dbt core because we do need a build system, right? We need to have many files and something that will add configuration and stuff. So for Scala, there is SBT. Just like SQL has dbt, Scala has Scala build tool. So you need a build system.
Yeah.
So we use the most popular format. We don't care. It's so you generate code. So that's one thing. So what that does is a couple of things. One, people don't feel like they're locked in. Large enterprises really care about that. Second, everybody uses tests, Git, CI/CD, best software practices that allows you to move changes faster to production with more confidence, especially as you have more tests. right? So everybody uses that. So that's very important. And you could say data ops or whatever is the name there, right? So of that functionality. So data ops comes in. And then the third thing is that the visual tools used to say, I only have these 15 visual component and that's it, or I just have these 30. And then there was some secondary interface to write like Java code or something, right? If you wanted to extend it. But what we said is you can create new visual components.
Yeah.
What that really means is what we are, and it's a lot more mature than just visual components. We are saying we bring the concept of packages from software into visual programming. When I mean packages, it can be a series of visual components. It can be subgraphs of those visual components. It can be UDFs, but then this can be my package of security. It has UDFs for security. It has visual components that do anonymization and encryption and decryption and all of that. And they might have a Python library that they depend on. And this entire thing is a project on Git, and that's a package. And now I can depend on the version 0.5 of that package, right? And then, so there is versioning and everything. But what it means for the user is that I go to Package Hub and I say, I want to use the security library. So I click the security library, and in my visual canvas, where I have the menu on top, I start seeing a security menu item. That's a dropdown that has security visual components, and I can just use them like anything else. So what this does is it gives confidence to the organizations who are using the product that tomorrow they will never run out of functionality. They will never be in a situation where they want to do something that they could have done in code that they cannot do in low code. Because a lot of the times, the knock against low code has been that you can go to a certain degree, but then you can't go the last mile. It's like when you need the absolute power of code, you have to abandon low code, right? And where we are saying is that that's never going to happen with Prophecy. So that was very, very important to us, that on the side of complexity, there's never going to be a use case that is too complex for Prophecy. So that's what has made us unique, right? It's going from visual to code and saying you are in the world of code. If you want to use your own Git CI/CD, that's perfectly fine. And your data engineer can write code by writing code, and in the next folder, you can come and write similar code visually, and that's okay, right?
So who is the ideal user or customer for you?
So now we have two main areas of focus. One product is has been in the market for a while. This is a lot of, you could say, which was initially targeted at the, what I would say, the visual ETL developers. This is customers who are like, I come from Informatica, I come from Ab Initio, I want to move to the cloud, I want to move to Spark, I want to move to Databricks, right? They have tens of thousands of pipelines, they run at scale. So we started there. Then the same interface started getting used by line of business people. Line of business people, data analysts, product managers were like, hey, we can do this, right? This visual thing is simple enough for us. It looks very much like Alteryx that we used to use. And actually, I took some design inspiration from Alteryx. They had a very clean UI. So then they started using it. And then they said, hey, can you give me the same on SQL? And then we started talking to Alteryx users, and Alteryx users had a particular set of problems, right? They are like, okay, I have visual drag and drop. This is Alteryx. I love Alteryx, right? But I have a couple of problems. One, Alteryx is not native to my cloud. It is not native to, say, Snowflake or Databricks SQL or whatever SQL they're using. So that means Alteryx is going to pull the data to the desktop. It doesn't scale. So as your data gets larger and more people are running into slightly larger data sets, so it gets really slow. So that is one problem. Second is the problem of iteration. What it means is that, let's say a data analyst says this is good, then they go to the data engineer, say, can you put this in production? They have to rewrite the pipeline in code to run at production. So that was a pain. And sometimes they write something and then it goes back and they're like, no, I need this thing changed a little bit. And then they go back, right? And now there's these two separate worlds. So these are the problems. Now, coming to the solutions, let's say I'm coming from Alteryx. I can continue to use Alteryx. That's great. I have something visual, or Matillion is similar, right? It's visual. Or I can say I'll write SQL. And there's always some people in the company who says, I have been writing SQL for 10 years. I've become comfortable with it.
Yeah.
They would say, I'll start using DBT, because before DBT, everybody had their, like, I was the Hive product manager. I have seen so much SQL. Every customer that I went to enterprise had their own scripts. It was their in-house DBT, right? And or they sometimes use Informatica to stitch a bunch of SQL queries together and add configuration in them and schedule them, which were the push down, just a series of push down. So there was always something to stitch together the SQL queries. So now those people are like, I'll use SQL with DBT, standard format, great. Now, when we talk to some large customers, they're like, okay, we are moving these 5,000 Alteryx users, we want to move to the cloud. Do I pick another visual tool? Do I pick SQL? And maybe with DBT core, right? And when, so that was the problem. So what we have said is you don't have to choose. Right. So what we built is a toggle button, right? Because that's kind of what we know how to do. We are like, on one side, you can continue to write SQL, you toggle it, all of it becomes visual pipelines. You start using visual pipelines and you toggle and SQL again. And, you edit either side, and we've built a product that can do that. So the advantage is customers no longer have to choose.
Yeah.
Whether you're a visual developer, whether you're a SQL developer, you can build the same pipeline, work on the same pipeline. So that, I think, is the second product. So the first product, of course, is much more mature, which is on Spark, like ETL pipelines at massive scale. The second is this line of business user, the data analysts who are looking for something that kind of merges Alteryx and DBT together, or Alteryx and SQL together.
So I want to go to this line of business, because that reminds me of data mesh, data products. But before I even go there, what happens when Prophecy becomes kind of the de facto way of visually developing the code? What happens to all the data engineers who are used to writing very complex data transformation code? What happens to their jobs, and what changes?
Yeah, actually, something interesting is going on. So one is that they can also use the same visual interface and much quicker develop the same code, right? But then what also happens is that companies want standards, right? So the question really is that let's say many pipelines need to be built across the organization. Is the data platform teams to do the job of all the line of business people for them? Or is their job to provide a platform and enable the line of business people to self-serve? I think if you ask the data platform team, they are happy to say, you guys self-serve, let us give you a good platform. And then the line of business people are like, please give us something self-serve, right? It's one of the core pillars of data mesh is a self-serve platform, right? So in that sense, the data platform people create standards. They say, here is how you do a security library. Here is the standard way of cleaning customer data. So what they are doing is they are creating these visual components, these subgraphs to capture repeatable business logic, to capture processes. Okay, you put this subgraph for logging and monitoring. We'll connect it wherever we want. If we want to page somebody or something, that's not for you. You just import it into every pipeline, right? They might have standard auditing logic, because finance, once you're going through banking, they have to make sure every pipeline comes with audit, that same number of rows that came in were written out, and that audit report must be written per pipeline. So what they do is they start building standards with code, writing Spark code, or in SQL side, you could say develop macros, right? That DBT allows you to, but that's what they do. They develop the standards and assist the people, and then they only get the complex pipelines themselves when people run into performance issues, etc. So they're kind of becoming the real platform team.
So it's like a hybrid model. So the centralized team is taking care of the more gnarly problems, they're creating the standards, the templates, and then the decentralized domain teams are responsible for their own business logic.
Yes, and they can build it very quickly, and then whatever they build or the central data team builds looks nearly identical. So it really helps, because even if they want the central data team to take care of the life cycle of the pipeline, they can just say, hey, I built this, can you manage it, right? And make sure it runs every day. And that's okay, because that's the same pipeline, right? The handover does not require a rewrite.
Right. Are we seeing even business people, like domain experts, because I'm just thinking, let's say, pharma, I'm a doctor, and I want to know what's happening with clinical studies in one place, and I want to know what pharma companies are doing, and I want to apply it to my EMR Epic database. Are we going to ever reach a space where the doctor says, oh, this is so easy for me to just drag and drop visually? I don't have to wait for my engineer to become available. What do you think of that?
So I will, sure. So I see where you're going with that. There is a couple of different stages here. So let me break down the stage. So stage one is, you say, I have a coding programmer. That's where a lot of the people who moved early to code are, and that's a mess because there's no process around.
It becomes a bottleneck.
It becomes a bottleneck. It's a black box, right? There is no process. There's no lineage. There's no, so it's just a bad way of doing data engineering. Now, the second thing is, you say, okay, the visual people are enabled. Now, when the visual people are enabled, the other thing we've gotten is sometimes there is even further simpler interfaces that they want to build for the data consumers who are, let's say, I won't call it data analyst, I would call it business analyst, who is one level less skilled. So for example, we have a Fortune 5-10 company in healthcare. What they are doing is, they are saying, okay, I will build this configurable pipeline, but now you say, I want all the prescriptions of this kind, and for where the prescription has been overdue for more than 120 days, and give me a report of these, right? So it's almost like there's these pre-built pipelines where they can configure some things and get the responses out. A lot of it is what I've actually seen. The examples are in this pharmacies, where they have all these complex rules that the pharmacy people understand. So these pipelines are there, and they are configured, but then they are used with some configuration by the literal business people. So that's one. Of course, we have one where it's again, one of the largest pharma and device manufacturing companies, again, Fortune 50. A lot of our customers are in Fortune 50. And they are using us where, there is they're using for supply chain analytics, right? This is basically the product manager and data analyst using us. So those people are using us for looking at their supply chain efficiency, for example. So we are seeing we are definitely seeing a pocket of business users, product managers using it. Now the question is, how do you get to that last mile doctor, right? Business user. And that's trickier. One is that you can have these pre-built interfaces, which can be pre-built pipelines that just have configuration. The second is, you can say, can ChatGPT type thing help? So we have a data copilot. You can write stuff in English. You can say, oh, I want, my top 50 customers by revenue. It will say, oh, revenue. So it will go back and say, I have customers, I have orders. The revenue must be, orders aggregated by customer and its total. And we'll figure that out and build that pipeline. But the question is that correct? Right. So that's where the boundary gets tricky. So we can move to a world where you start with English and the visual pipelines gets generated, but then you have to kind of validate if everything is correct. As
it's a co-pilot. So you need a pilot.
You need a pilot. You can't do without a pilot, because, if you say spend, there might be 5 different ways, right? We were just talking about this to the bank yesterday. So we had a CIO of a bank, top 4 bank in US. We have 2 of the top 4 banks. And they were visiting us, and they were saying, hey, when we say spend in bank, it could have 5 different formulas. And we are like, hey, we can generate one for you or suggest 5 for you, but then you need a pilot. We can't do without a pilot.
Do you have your clients who are beta testing or using the LLM interface?
Yeah, so we have customers who are using the Copilot. So basically, our SQL product, right, which as we look at it, we are like, okay, let's build the best commercial product on DBT Core. And so we have that product out. We are not really marketing it, but we have our first 4 or 5 customers are working on it. And these are large customers. And and giving us feedback, and we are improving it. We'll maybe release it in a few months go from controlled availability to general availability. But though they are using our Copilot and they're liking it. So Copilot they use sometimes for saying, I want this pipeline, but it's also much more effective within an expression. When you're trying to write an expression, you say, I want date diff this. And it just writes that expression for you, right? You don't have to go and search for how to do that on Stack Overflow.
So, Raj, I've seen some GitHub statistics that show something like 60% of the code is now written using these large language models. What's your prediction of both LLM and visually creating it? I mean, do you see what percentage are we at today, and where do you think we'll be a few years from now?
I think at least for our customer base, especially let's say people on the line of business side, I think 60 to 70% of the work done in data transformation by data analysts, we should be able to automate away.
Okay.
And it has many pieces, right? So one is as you write pipelines, so there's small little things. So one is that it's helping you write business logic, right? If you've computed internal rate of return in one place, and you say, I want IRR, the Copilot will say, I know how you do it. Here is the formula, unless you want to make a change, right? So there is that kind of thing. It will just start suggesting the next steps. So that will just make building pipelines much, much quicker. So that's one thing. The second thing is a lot of the machinery today doesn't exist. Right? The lineage, the search, the orchestration, a lot of this just plumbing.
Yeah.
I don't know. People all talk about what the large language models are going to do, and the question really is do you know where your spend is going? Do you know which are your worst performing pipelines? And most people can't tell, right? So I'm just saying at the systems layer, basic plumbing, there is a lot of gap. A lot of the modern data tool products are not very good. So that's the second thing. The third thing is there's small things, right? Let's say, why don't people write comments?
Yeah.
I just wrote the code. Now I must write the same thing in English again, right? It's like I'm just redoing the work. So the comments, the get comments, the descriptions of things, the descriptions of columns from lineage, all of that is going to get automated away. So one is that you're helping people build pipelines. Second is you're saying, I already have the lineage. A data analyst picks up a column and there's an English paragraph that explains how this was computed. Right. And that doesn't. So there's a lot of things that can be automated away. For every git commit, the commit message gets auto-generated, descriptions get auto-generated, tests get auto-generated, right? So for example, you can look at the profile of a column and say, here is a data quality test that should be run every day, and figure out what the right model is based on data distribution.
Right. LLM or can you?
No, that's not LLM. That's regular traditional ML.
Just to generate the comments, for example.
Generating the comments is LLMs suggesting based on the column name or a description of what you're trying to compute, generating the expression or generating the pipeline. All of that is LLM. But then data quality is not. Right? Data quality, you can just look at the profile of a column, say, okay, for this profile, this model is the best fit. Yeah. And then you can just, you can just have that check, which is trains that model and checks it against that data. So, and then monitors it automatically. So some of the companies in data observability are doing this, but that just takes away the work. So we can auto-generate unit tests, right, today. But so if you look at it, what does it look from 2 years from now? You start writing or typing or describing in English, 60-70% of your pipeline gets written. It gets automatically documented. You say, I want to run it in production. That's great. You're getting the stats of how it's performing. If it is given the size of the data, etc., if it's taking too much time, we'd be looks like there's an optimization opportunity here. If something goes, and then you're here are your unit tests automatically generated. Here are your data quality tests automatically generated. So, a lot of the plumbing we're just going to take away, right? So in a couple of years, we are hoping that, people don't say I spend 90% of my time in data transformation. So our goal is people should focus on business value, more time thinking about, the results they've gotten from the chart and what to do about that and what next experiment to run, rather than just, wrestling with technology.
Fascinating. Yeah, this where we are going is pretty amazing.
Thank
So
you.
you have been, 6 years you spent building this. You had an initial hypothesis, and then you've got a lot of clients. What are some of the most surprising use cases that you never anticipated or built the product for, but your company took you in that direction?
I Yeah, I think the one thing which is, I guess, not that surprising is like we built the product for ETL and visual ETL developers, and the line of business people are like, we need this, and I think that pull and that level of frustration that they have of being stuck behind, like say earlier the Hadoop people and the new people, is like, data. I feel like sometimes data platform teams, it's like a lot of people want them to start producing value. I think that was surprising. The other thing, I don't know, it's just, I don't think we've gotten that much surprise from the customer point of view. I think customers, it's been pretty good there. I think the surprise has been the venture industry. I think that's totally surprising. It's like we have a full solution and it's hard to get funded. I mean, it's not like we're struggling. We're doing pretty good. Okay. We also are just closed our Series B, so we'll announce that in a few weeks. So it's
Oh,
not that, but it's just like the relentless funding of
right,
point solutions continues. The
right.
relentless push of PLG, right? And it's just like, so it's one, like when I go look at revenue and I look at what my customers are asking for, that is one world. And then you go talk to the VCs and it's a completely different world. It's yeah.
So, so Raj, congratulations on Series B. I just learned
I'm
from
not
you.
announcing it.
I'm
I'm
not
just letting you
announcing
know
it.
it's coming. It's
Yeah.
not done yet. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. No
Wrapping it
worries.
up.
So in fact, I was going to ask you about this shift you saw to domains, because that's data product, such an important part of my coverage. But even before I go there, I now have a new question, which is, I noticed that you said, you have a complete product, and yet sometimes it's a challenge to get it out there. I see this in data quality, where the clients are saying, well, how do I measure? How do I know my data, what impact bad data quality has? And if I cannot measure the problem, then I cannot measure the ROI. Is that something you see? Yeah.
Yes. So let me put it this way. As we are building the complete product, it's not like, hey, we built the complete product, we are done.
Yeah, it's
There
not.
are things like there are the quality and observability dimensions where we are still in the earlier part of the journey.
Right.
But of course, customers buy a roadmap, right? Because they're going to not work with us for 6 months, but for 10 years. And what we are seeing is, yes, we are getting a lot of, from the existing customers, we are getting a lot of push on quality, on performance statistics, cost, right? People are like, show me where my cost is going.
Yep.
And they're like, as soon as a developer builds, a data developer or a data analyst builds a pipeline, show $7 on top of it. It's like, that's how much this pipeline will cost to run every day. Right? It's like, just show it right there. You know how much it costs, right? So that's the thing. It's like so basically, things like cost, things like quality, and things like progress per team, that should just roll up by default in your data development, your data pipeline development. I don't know why it doesn't. It just seems so obvious, because as an executive, you say, hey, this team, I'm having data quality problem. Let's say you are, say credit card processing, right? And now you're giving data to the downstream banks. Now, so now some problems start coming. You're like, okay, let's spend 2 months on data quality here. At the end of it, okay, what improved? Where were we? Where are we now? And nobody knows, right?
Yeah,
So,
unfortunately.
yeah, and then I guess I'm not the first one to say this, but as founders and as when you're running a company, you find out that engineering is the least engineering kind, is run with the least engineering and numbers, and your sales and marketing is run with the most numbers. And it's like it's almost completely opposite. It's like, but it's been, yeah.
I have to say thank you for all your honesty. I mean, you're really like opening up and just talking about some of the challenges of startups and CEOs. And so changing the topic and going to the line of business.
Yes.
Do you see a move towards data mesh? Data mesh can be very confusing. A lot of people don't want to do data mesh, and also data products. And I want to separate the two. So what are you seeing? Yeah.
So what we are seeing is the people have read about data mesh. A lot of executives I've talked to in banks, in healthcare companies, in tech companies have read about data mesh, but they have not really taken data mesh away from it. What they've taken away from it is, I want a self-serve platform or self-serve data preparation, and I need to build data products, manage data more like products. I think, and then what has moved into their terminology when I'm having a conversation is these two things. They want data products and they want a self-serve platform. These are the two terms that kind of have stuck from the 4 pillars of a data mesh, right? And people are, and when they say data product, they have so many data sets, right? So many collecting dust, 10 copies of the same thing. They want, some of the data to be marked with the quality, with the freshness, with this, and then other people to use them. And, that publish subscribe mechanism, we provide that, right? So there is a push toward data products for sure. There is so there is that. There is also a push towards self-serve platform, right? They're like, we want to, not depend on another team. I think there is no data product without a self-serve data platform.
I see.
Because how are you going to build the data product?
Right. So you have a product that can help you build the data product. And then something interesting that caught my ears right now is that you have a publish. So you can publish it to like a marketplace so it can be discovered. How does
So I think we haven't quite. So I can right now there is not quite a marketplace, but it's coming. We have, for example, we have a package hub. And we are thinking that we are releasing now, and we're probably going to release right after that data product hub, right, where you can go look at data sets that are produced. So right now
you have a data product hub already.
No, we don't have that. I'm saying that's coming next. So right now, it's just a wrapper on it for easier search. So what right now we have is you have a project. The project has many data sets, right? And then the project says, I publish these 3.
Right.
Okay, so when those 3 are published and you are in another project, you are like, show me what are all the data sets that I can subscribe to, right? And then you can see them. Right, in your development interface. It's just not put in a hub kind of place, right? So you can see them, and when you look at one of those, you can see the quality, you can see how often it's being refreshed, and then you can say, I choose to use that, and you can subscribe that. So then when you're on the other side, you can see, hey, there is this like, will I break something that is subscribed to me, right? And all of that stuff. So we have the core publish subscribe mechanism, and people are using that. The tags, you can mark them, and then the discoverability is there, but we haven't quite gone to the point where and we have a hub where you can go and see what are all the data products that are published. And I think that to what you mentioned, it's probably a very important thing to add. So I think it'll probably come pretty soon.
And also usage. At some point, you want to capture the usage, how many people are using it, version control, all of that. So,
but the other thing is, like, if let's say you write in English using Data Copilot that I want, my top customers, right? What customer table are you going to use? What data set are you going to use? You're going to go to the data product and say which one is refreshed.
Yeah.
Which one is refreshed most often? Which one has high quality, refreshed more often, and the most subscribed? Perhaps you'll point the user straight into that, right? So the system can nudge you towards high quality data products. But that is very much the world we are going toward.
I absolutely love what you just said, because this is exactly where I am going with my research. I am just publishing a book in the next few weeks called Data Product for Dummies. But
that's very exciting.
Thank you. And my goal is to actually push the boundary and say LLMs should sit on data products, because data products are curated and there's a product owner. So there's somebody who's accountable, responsible, data quality, SLAs, all those things exist. So now you don't want LLM to go directly to data. A, it doesn't know which of the 1,000 tables to look at. And secondly, what if there's an LLM injection? All kinds of things, risks open up.
So actually, yeah, sorry, if you give me a minute here. So what we are doing, and this is sometimes, because people have also been talking about data fabric and stuff, right? But the main thing is, like, when we are building our data copilot, there are two essential pieces of it. One is the large language model that we treat as commodity. We are not specializing it. Then is the knowledge graph. So we have the metadata, and on metadata, we are building the knowledge graph. We know what your tables are. We know how they connect to one another, and we know some of the computed expressions. And that is an exact system. And that's when you ask a question, we say, okay, you asked an English question. Then we go to the knowledge graph and get some relevant context. And then we go to the LLM and say, given this context, what is the answer to this question? Right? And in the context we are providing, we can provide exactly right, precisely right data products, which are high quality. So then you, to the large language model, you are using this knowledge graph and providing, they call it grounding, the right context. And this might be a very good way to merge, the high quality data products with LLMs.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, what you just explained, people are using it against databases, and it's called RAG, Retrieval Augmented Generation, where you ask a question in English, and then you send a query to. Now we're talking about data products, and then you send it back to LLM to package it and return the response in English.
Yes, and so a lot of the smart things are going to be in that intelligent query made to the LLM, and that's going to be a very exciting place, right? So I think data products are probably going to continue to become more important as the quality and other things come with it. So that's a very nice thing that you picked out of, the data mesh, because that's probably the long-term concept that's going to survive.
Most exciting part of data mesh is the data products. And the best part is you can do data products without even thinking about data mesh. You don't you don't understand data mesh or data fabric or whatever, don't worry about it. You just focus on data products. So
it makes sense.
Yeah. And so I'm just curious, one last question, then we'll start wrapping it up. So the question is, what percentage of your customers are actually looking or interested in data products, or are they in production, or are they still thinking the traditional way of ETL, tables, views, and things like that?
So I would say there's two sets of users, right? The people who are in traditional ETL, they are taking it to a certain degree, processing, cleaning data, and publishing well-structured schemas into the data warehouse for many different users to use. So they are not in that mindset of, they might not use this language. They do care about quality, they do care about a lot of things, but perhaps not the language. Whereas when I go to line of business people, that's the language they use. Everybody uses the same language. They're like, we want to build data products, and they're doing this last mile data pipelines, right? So it's like 80% of the stuff is done by maybe the central team. The last mile people, the data analysts, they care so much about data products, and they're starting to talk about it. They want to be able to use them. They want to be, like I said, publish, subscribe. That's why we built it, because they're like, we want to be able to publish our data products and subscribe to them. And they're just waiting for a little bit more technology to come, make it real. But I think directionally, everybody's sold.
Got it. Okay, very good. Thank you so much. This has been so amazing, just talking about all these, some of my favorite topics. So before I wrap up, I would love to see if you can share two things. What lessons have you learned in your journey of running a company and putting yourself out there at cutting edge? And secondly, tell us something interesting and fun about you that most of the world does not know.
Okay, so let's go through them one by one.
Yes.
I mean, running a startup is like an exciting and a very humbling experience. Things are just so tough, and a lot of times things just get done. I'm actually my dad used to say, tell me this to encourage me. He says, if you're long enough in the field, sometimes the luck will go the other way, but sometimes luck will come your way too. Right. But the main thing is you are stalled long enough in the field. So I think building a startup has been quite a challenging journey with a lot of ups and downs. I think right now we are on a big up. The market has moved toward us, right? Some of the credibility of modern data stack is going down. A lot more interest coming to machine learning and LLM, which naturally leads itself to unstructured data. So in a sense, like some of the bets we made, some of the bets we stuck with, through all the noise about bottoms up, PLG, latest fads, it's like we've stuck through to what we believe is a better product for the customer. And I think that has been a great thing to anchor on. And then, about me,
If I may say,
yeah,
if I may
please.
something, so when you say, sometimes luck happens, to me, the way what I just heard from you, luck is all this deep preparation coupled with persistence. And
Yes.
you can call it luck, so
You can call it luck, but it's like sometimes the fashion goes away from what you are
yeah,
doing.
correct.
But I think the anchoring on the core value to the customer and what the customer is asking for. Yeah, but to your point, right? It's yeah. So the other thing is, I mean, well, my wife finds it amusing that I spend so incredible amount of my time playing silly phone video games.
Oh, wow.
She's like, are you killing the dragon with the skeletons again? I'm like, yep. And I don't know if it's amusing. It's just like my escape from when the stress is quite a lot. I just go into, this game. It's called Clash Royale. And, you're destroying towers.
Oh,
So,
well.
so it's just a silly little game. And it's taken way too much money from me. They always make you pay for upgrades. But yeah. It's fun to play some small little video games and keep things fun.
Yeah, very true. Thank you so much for your time. This was quite a eye-opening discussion about what's happening in this world of visual ETL, data pipelines, and where are we going with LLMs. And so glad you took some time to join the podcast today.
Thank you so much for the opportunity, Sanjeev. Always great to talk to you.
Likewise. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for joining. Bye.